All right, everyone. I hope anyone who's listening can hear me. Welcome to the first episode of the Starbright podcast, a kink lifestyle opinion bent podcast. Um, I hope you guys enjoy what we have planned for you. Um, but first of all, since this is the first episode, I guess we should go over what the Starbright podcast is and why the hell you should listen to it and why the hell you should listen to any of us. Pro tip for that last one: you really shouldn't do your own research at all times. So I'll open it up with this.
Mhm.
Starbright podcast is made from a very specific community, uh, being hosted by a wonderful, wonderful lady, Starlight, and so the podcast name Starbright. She is not on the podcast at this moment. She might guest in a future episode, but she has fostered a wonderful community. The link invite to which you should be able to find in the YouTube description of this if you are watching this later on YouTube. If you're watching it right now, you are either watching it on Twitch or you're probably on the Discord already, and you've probably seen this here. But if you are not, you can find that link on the YouTube video on demand for this if you would like to join and chat with us live in the live chat on which this podcast was based. So this is a kink and lifestyle bent podcast. So what I mean by that is that we are going to examine issues that are very relevant to the kink and BDSM lifestyle kind of community, and we're going to examine multiple issues. Not necessarily everything is always going to be about the kink and BDSM communities, but we're probably going to put spins on even like current events and stuff like that. Something that might have relevance and coming at it as a view of members of that community. So if you enjoy that kind of content, then that is what we are here for. There is going to be a focus on hopefully educating ourselves and anyone else who's listening about the things about which we're talking. I'd like to think our panel has a pretty wide spread of information and different views on things, and some of us are more experienced than others, which is totally fine and good. We have a third host. We'll talk about the hosts in a little bit. We have a third host joining us a little bit later, who I think is not so much experienced. So hopefully she'll be able to help us identify when we're talking about stuff that maybe people don't understand. Yeah, that's pretty much it. The format's going to be pretty simple. Each week, one or each other week, I should say, because this is going to be every other Friday that we're broadcasting at this time. One of our hosts is going to pick a topic, any topic. Could be something relevant to kink, could be something not directly relevant, and then we'll turn it into something about kink. Could be current events, could be just anything they want to talk about. Could be they want to have a one-sided narcissistic group therapy session where they talk about what they went through. That's fine too. Anything you want to talk about, we can talk about. And so we're going to rotate basically who's picking those topics every episode. Today's episode is going to be about consent, which is pretty much one of the most basic and important things I think in the lifestyle. Like one of the foundational things, open and honest communication, which obviously is comes down to consent, because no one should be doing anything without consenting, obviously. We're going to jump into that in a minute. Let's go over the hosts. I am Will, also known as Will Ing, on Discord and many other places. You can find me on YouTube and Twitch under very similar things. They should be linked in the description. I will be posting the other hosts' social medias if they want me to, if they send them to me as well, in that same place. If you ever want to find any of us, I've been in the lifestyle and the scene for about I think 15 years now, and I think I've been in like every kind of dynamic I can imagine. Generally across that time period, I've had a lot of experience in different things. I'd say my weakest skill is probably as a rigger. Um, I know some very basic uh, shibari patterns, but I don't even have ropes anymore in my house. I don't think. At least I couldn't find them last time I went looking. Um, so that's probably my weakest skill. But I've been around for a while. What about you, Drow?
Hello, my name is Alex. Most people know me through socials as Drow Daddy. I have been in the community for since I was about 18. It just kind of fit with my most of us people in the community are usually a lot of our stuff has to do with trauma. So that's what really made me feel more at ease, I guess. But uh but yeah, I mean that's kind of just how it all started. And then That's really it.
Yeah, it's good intro. And how about you, Mouse?
Hi guys, I'm Mouse. I also go by Anani, depending on what social media you know me from. I have been in the lifestyle, I want to say, gosh, over 15 years. I got into the lifestyle when I was a teenager. I've been in vanilla relationships, I've been in the spicy kink relationships. I explored to see what I was most comfortable with, and at the end of the day, I always come back to kink. For me, I don't think it's really trauma related. I say constantly, there is a Venn diagram of kink and neurodivergence, and generally speaking, that's a circle. And I think that's how I found my way into kink. I think it is the biggest dopamine seek that I have. Um, my role is personally as a brat. I will discuss bratting more in depth at a later date, but I'm a brat and I run the page Bratty Sassy Mouse, and I also go by Anani Mouse on different platforms.
So I think you might other than like being the most experienced in terms of being in the scene for the longest period of time. I think you might be the most educated on certain things. I think you probably, I mean, you're a very well educated individual just generally.
Especially on the subby side of things.
I
Okay,
do
okay.
hold multiple STEM degrees, but in terms of kink, I think it's very hard to call yourself more educated than anyone else, because we all have different educational backgrounds, and there's different ways to be educated on different things. I think it's really hard to say that somebody's more educated than anyone else.
That's a really
Exactly.
good way to put it, and I actually, because I mentioned that earlier too. Like, don't take everything said here with a grain of salt. One of us might call ourselves experts. Maybe one of us is expert. It doesn't really matter. Everything you do in life, go out and do your own research first. All right, don't just repeat our words. All right, go and learn about things. There's almost nothing more powerful in this world than a nice Google search
I
and
will
a very inquisitive curiosity about things.
I will also counter that you should definitely listen to people who know what they're talking about, though. Don't just Google it and assume that the person you're reading from knows what they're talking about. Make sure that they have,
Exactly.
10 plus years of experience doing what they're doing. Make sure they're doing it safely. Make sure they're somebody who is trustworthy and doesn't have a whole bunch of consent violation records.
Yeah,
I would be very, very cautious about just pre doing research. You want to make sure the people you're getting your data from are people who are trustworthy, because that is not always true when you're just Googling or looking on Reddit or something.
Well, of course, that goes without saying. And I'm just saying we can provide a good base of information for people to learn, but we are not be all end all sitting here. And
Exactly.
just because and our experiences, what we've learned, might not apply to the experiences of whoever's listening. So you
Hmm.
definitely you do have to learn to apply that information on your own way. I'm just saying, don't just verbatim repeat what we say, because that's probably
Exactly.
never a good. And for the same as you guys just said, don't verbatim just repeat what you Google and find online either. Think about it, learn about
Hmm.
it, educate yourselves, which is kind of part of what we're doing here.
Kink
Um,
is always a fluid situation, so you have to learn how to apply these things to a fluid situation.
yeah, I've actually, I'm not a big fan of a lot of the labels in the scene myself, only because each dynamic is going to be completely different. Like even if you want to like a brat, you say the word brat, everyone kind of thinks of like one certain kind of person, right? But every brat's going to
Yeah,
brat differently. Every brat's going to have different boundaries. Every brat's going to want different things. And just because you were
exactly.
with one brat and they were one way doesn't mean the next brat's going to be the same. And you can't apply that to a different person. You have to.
Exactly.
So those labels, even the things we talk about here, is not absolute. Nothing we talk about here is absolute. It's all going to
There
apply
are
differently.
many different types of brats, there's many different types of littles, and there's many different types of subs. And just because you've had a negative experience with one does not mean that that is across the board going to be true with everybody. As I said earlier, it is very, very fluid. Everyone's a little bit different. Everyone has their own labels that they apply to themselves for different reasons. And for that reason, every time you go into a dynamic, it's going to be different, and things will have to be applied and consented to and done differently.
Exactly. And then I guess we do have that one more host that I mentioned, Liv, who is I believe currently trying to put her child down, trying to put her child to sleep, Tr-
I'm
in
not
bed,
down.
tucking
We're
them
not putting
into
yeah.
children
bed.
Not,
down here.
not putting the
Tu-
child down. That's
li-
kind of bad.
Maybe
yeah,
not the
she's not a child
terminology
killer.
I would choose.
Not a child killer. I promise. She's trying to put her child to sleep, and she will be joining us a little later. So we will probably get her to join that, and she'll answer those questions when she gets in here. So we'll jump right into. So hopefully you have a good idea of what the podcast is and what the format's gonna kind of be, and who we are, kind of a little bit. I guess you'll get to know us better as you talk to us on the community, or by watching these podcasts and listening to them. We'll jump right into episode 1. So episode 1, all about consent. So like I said, consent is probably the most important aspect, probably, of the lifestyle. I mean, there's a lot that goes into the lifestyle. There's a lot of little nuances and a lot of things, but there is probably nothing more important than an enthusiastic yes, I think, is the term that most people
Yeah.
use. Informed enthusiastic yes is even more important, which I think I'll mention in a
Mhm.
second. But you guys have any specific views on consent other than that? And you guys agree that's super important?
It is, but I would also argue that it's important in every aspect of life, and seeing it as just a behemoth
Oh
and
yeah.
kink is inherently going to be a problem because you have to have consent for everything. You have to have consent before you go to a theme park with somebody to make sure that they're going to be on the same page with you. They want to go. They want to, spend the day with you. They want to be there for 12 hours. Like, you have to have consent for every aspect of everything you do in life. And it shouldn't really be that intimidating of a behemoth when you enter kink to be like, oh, yeah, you have to have consent. It shouldn't be something that people are alarmed by or confused by. We use consent in everyday life, and it's going to be exactly the same in kink. You just have to make sure that the person that you're speaking to knows what you're about to do and is glad to do it.
Oh yeah, I mean, consent comes up in a lot of industries too. I think a big one
Mhm.
is in the medical field, right? If anyone here has
Yep.
ever
Yeah.
worked in the medical field, you can't just do a surgery to someone. They have to consent
Mhm.
to it.
I've worked
Um,
in clinical research for years. We do informed consent, and it is a big deal. There's a reason you sign like 17, 18 pages of documents because every possible outcome has to be discussed. You have to consent to everything.
Oh
It
yeah,
is a
like
huge deal.
exactly.
absolutely massive. Um, I mean, and I hope no one listening to this has a different opinion on that, because I honestly don't know. Like, that's such a basic thing. But
Mhm,
there's a lot of nuance when it comes to consent. It's
mhm,
not just an enthusiastic yes, which again I believe is like the common terminology. Um, and
mhm.
and 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 listen, guys, no one's asking you to whip out a contract. Though I have seen people that want that and seen people that do
Yes.
that, and if that's
It
if that's what you want, there's nothing wrong with that.
right, and the thing is like like you said, each dynamic is different, and like the contracts are actually in some form, depending on the person, are actually very good for the dynamic.
Mhm.
It just
Especially in a
varies
slave
on
master scenario, they really love their
exactly.
contracts.
Yes, I'm very big on contracts in that type of scenario typically. But
Mhm,
it's consent as a altogether as a whole matters a lot. Even if it's simple as asking like going out, instead of like hugging, just hugging someone, always ask, unless they let you know beforehand, because you don't want to just go to some random stranger, but like and just hug them and then
mhm.
have to face consequences.
I'm not a hugger. I do not like being hugged. I
Yes,
definitely tell people no if they go to hug me, and I appreciate people who ask before they try.
exactly.
I hate people that I'm not close with coming in for a hug, and it very much is appreciated by me when I can go, "Yeah, don't do that. It's gonna be
And
awkward for both of us when I have to push you away."
Right.
and
And
and that's the
like
same on every level. That's not just like hugging. That's kissing. That's
exactly
it's every
anything,
little thing that you're doing. Yeah.
anything, yeah.
Mhm.
And
On this
another
note, I do wanna
Mhm.
mention implied consent because that is a tricky one, and
Ah,
people need to
wow.
know the difference between implied consent and
Hold that for a
outright
second.
yes.
Hold that for a second, because I want to get into some consent scenarios, because I think that's where the meat and
Mhm,
potatoes and the controversy of this episode is going
yes.
to be. So we're going to talk about Joe. I
mhm.
think you were about to mention something else.
Mhm. Um I don't okay. So like and consent can be about, like we just said, like about anything. Um it could also I mean, even if it's just something, like even a hug or like even just being near somebody, like especially if they're in a bad mood or upset, like you don't want to, invade their personal space type of thing. So you always want to ask, hey, is it okay if, I like get closer type of thing? And then, if they say no, then so be it. Just, uh, always give them their space. But consent is universal about everything. It's not just about relationships. It could be like work related. It could be medically it has to do with medical things. Even like going to the bar, always ask if you could, like if there's a group at a table, always ask if you could sit with them or, something like that too. It's just universally in your best interest to ask before you do anything.
Oh yeah, I mean completely. But it's not, and here's where the nuance starts coming in though,
Mhm.
and this is the level in between basic consent and talking about more specific scenarios like implied
Right.
consent. There are frameworks within BDSM, and I'm certain a lot of people who listen to this probably never heard any of these before unless they've been in the scene a long time. So there are consent frameworks that have been around for a while. I think the most popular one coming out of uh, I think back from the 1980s is SSC, which is an acronym for safe,
Mhm.
sane, and consensual. And so the idea is that everyone who is involved in a scene, which is a term defining, an event, a meeting, a thing that's happening between you and someone else or a group of people or whatever it happens to be, that specific time. And that specific time is an important thing to delineate here because obviously, just because you have consent to do something once doesn't mean you have consent to do it again. So if someone hooks up with someone, that doesn't mean you have consent to just go hook up with them again anytime you goddamn want. The term scene is quite often used for being this one time, this thing that happened, this thing that we did together or with someone else or whatnot for that specific time. So safe, sane, and consensual is this idea that everyone should be safe with what they're doing. It should be something sane, and it should be consensual. They should both consent to that. Now, that's very common sense, even if you've never heard that before. And I would hope that's just common and we would all understand that. But then there's
Mhm.
another one that has come about since I think the turn of the millennium called RAC, which is maybe more people might have heard about, which is risk-aware consensual kink, and this is more an informed enthusiastic yes, and I think this is where I draw the line where this is even more important than just an enthusiastic yes. Because I would hope we're all aware that there are risks involved in some types of things that we do as kinksters in the
Mhm.
lifestyle. And it could be limited to things like impact play. People can get bruised, people can get injured. Uh, there's another one that I'll mention in a minute because I think it's something that happens a lot and people don't talk about it as much. But the idea behind RAC, risk aware consensual kink, is that it's not enough just to say an enthusiastic yes, but that both parties should understand what they're being asked to do. Like if I say I want to restrain you, both parties should understand what exactly that means. We need to break that down. How am I going to restrain you? What does that entail? What exactly is being done? And then perhaps even most importantly is not just the education of what I'm asking to do to you or what someone is asking me to do to them. It's that we're aware of the risks that are involved in that because if I say, "Hey, I enjoy impact play" to someone, just as an example, and they say, "Okay, that I'm not experienced with that. That sounds great. Why don't we try that?" Well, maybe they're not aware that they could get, a bruise in an area that maybe other people could see, and maybe they don't appreciate that. They're not aware of the risks involved in that activity. In which case, are they really consenting? Dude, because they never understood what they were consenting to. They never understood the risks that were involved with that. And I'm sure a lot of people who are more new to the scene have probably crossed that line and had that boundary crossed and didn't know that. And that's not, unless that's
Mhm.
being done purposely. That's not. I'm not like gonna say that someone's doing that maliciously. It's very common, like two people who are not very experienced in something that will cross that boundary because they don't know the risks involved with what they're trying to do. Breath play is probably a
Exactly.
big one. If you're not aware of the risks of breath
Oh.
play, like yeah, that's huge. That's a problem. You both
Definitely.
should
Mhm.
learn what that is and learn what those risks are before you go into it because that
Mhm.
then causes a problem.
Absolutely. A breath play, especially, that's such a huge risk too. And
Oh
that's
yeah.
not even getting into CNC, which is a monstrosity if people are not risk aware. That is one of those things that if you're not entirely risk aware, you are entering a very, very dangerous situation.
100%. Also,
Yeah.
high live.
Yeah. Hey, Liv. We'll
Hey,
jump to Liv in just a second, but
I'm
yeah,
so
I don't like.
sorry.
I'm hoping. No, all good, Liv. It's good that you can finally join us, and that your kid is hopefully alive.
Yeah,
Now.
I will try my best. I don't know. Sh- she's been very hard to get to sleep lately, so I'm not 100% sure if she'll stay that way, but I'm hoping that she does, and so we'll see how this all goes.
Yeah, we can all cross our fingers on that one.
Okay.
But like the amount of people like I've known people that have never done breath play before and like, oh, let's
Mhm.
like push down on the front of their throat, which is exactly what you're not supposed to do in
No.
breath play. Like,
Exactly.
and that comes down to that, but that's every like one thing, and because I mentioned it before, my weakest skill is bondage, is probably restraint. Basic restraint I can do, that's easy enough. But if you
Mhm.
are a rope bunny or want to be a rope bunny, there is a danger to being restrained that a lot of people don't talk about and isn't mentioned. But pretty much
Yes.
every long-term rope bunny I've met, to some degree or another, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them, have some form of temporary or permanent nerve damage because at some time they were with an inexperienced or an inattentive rigger who didn't know what they were doing. And having ropes tying you
Mhm.
up for a very long period of time can do that.
Mhm. Yes, very much
And
so. And there's also the risk of the partner getting distracted and walking away and leaving you restrained for an extended period of time against your consent, which is something that I have had horror stories, and I've heard horror stories about this happening, where a rigger took a call and left a sub laying there for an extended period, and nobody came to release them.
yep, and that is exactly what you don't want to have happen, which is why I think informed enthusiastic yes is even more important. You have to not only
Yes.
be educated about what you want to do, but you have to be aware of what the risks are. And that
Hmm.
goes back to what we're talking about because consent is important in the medical field. If you go in for a surgery, they're going to tell you what the risks are. You have to know what the risks are before you're consenting to a surgery. They're not going to say,
Hmm.
"Oh, we're going to do open heart surgery. Don't worry, it's fine. There's no risk of anything happening. It's you're fine." And you wouldn't want to go into a surgery with someone telling you, "Oh, there's no risks. Don't worry about it. It's fine." So don't
Exactly.
jump into a scene with someone that's telling you that either. It's just as risky to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very much so. In fact,
Uh,
I think it's very dangerous to do a scene with anybody who isn't sure what the risks are. If they don't know when you ask what the risks are, you both need to pause and do the research before you attempt.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I could not possibly agree with that more. And before we jump into continuing with these consent scenarios, Liv, now that you're
Yeah.
finally here,
Hi.
who are you? Why should anyone listen to you, or why shouldn't we listen to you? Like,
Oh,
what's your like? We did a brief introduction of ourselves. If you'd like to
well,
go.
I'm not very good at introducing myself.
Oh, you and me both, my friend.
Like literally people are like, "So, tell me about yourself." And I'm like, "Oh, hi, it's me." Um, well, oh god. Let me see. Well, I do run the page, Daddy's Bratty BPD Princess, if anybody wants to, um, there's that information there. And I don't know, I just personally, I've kind of always liked the idea of doing a podcast of some kind. I didn't really like have, because again, I'm so new to everything, like, but I really wanted to do a podcast. So, when Will reached out to me, it was very much like, oh my goodness, like, is this really happening kind of thing. And then I was like, you know what? This is this could be a fun way to kind of explore that kink community a little bit further. And especially there's a lot of topics that like I'm hoping that we can go through that like I can also learn from too as well. So like it's all a very interesting experience for me. And I'm very excited to just kind of be here and see what happens and enjoy it as much as I can, and learn as much as I can from it all. And yeah.
Yeah, I'd like
So
you to kind of be our touchstone in terms of like common sense. I think because the rest of us have a lot of experience. So if we ever like mention a term or talk about something that you don't know, Like
Yeah.
anything that comes up, just please immediately tell us, because we're very happy to explain things to you.
Exactly.
And that's just
Yeah.
because if you don't understand it, then probably maybe some people listening don't understand it. And let's
Yeah,
fix that.
exactly. And that's like definitely something that I'm trying to work on, because like my anxiety is so bad. So it's literally like, this is like, even like this is such a huge step for me, because I was like, I don't even know if I want to do this because I'm anxious, and like I know I'll be like shaking the entire time. But then I was like, you know what? Like, we're gonna go out of my comfort zone a little bit. We're gonna try this. We're gonna, we're gonna just open up and try to just be more sociable.
And we're honored to have you here.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited. Should be fun.
All right, so I
I don't
think
I
from
think that was
that,
okay.
yeah, no, you were totally fine. It was great. There is
Mhm.
another new framework that has come up more recently. I think I've only seen it in the last couple months. Maybe Drow or maybe Mouse. Maybe you guys have heard of it longer. But there's a new one called Prick, which is very funny. Haha,
Yeah,
prick,
I've
ha 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 ha.
seen that one. Yeah, I've definitely seen that one around. Not too familiar with
Yeah,
it yet.
yeah, personal responsibility informed consensual kink is what that acronym stands for, which
Right.
is kind of the same thing as rack, but also with a focus on that it is your personal responsibility to actually know and educate yourself and look into those risks and be responsible for what you're agreeing to and what you're agreeing to do, and all of that.
Mhm.
um I don't I've only seen this one really recently. I think that one's like super new. I'm not
I
sure. I'm
had,
not sure the fact that that's
mm,
left out of rack really, like, to me that's part of rack. You should always take personal
yeah,
responsibility for yourself, but
I feel like that's borderline a cop out too, because there are going to be people who are new who wouldn't have had access to this type of research. So just expecting them to have that kind of seems unfair to me. Like, we as a community do still need to help educate the people coming in. So if
Yeah.
you're
Exactly.
playing with a newer sub or a newer dom and they don't know exactly what's happening, personal responsibility, absolutely, but we still are responsible to teach them and show them and help them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it is a less safe community as a whole. I'm not really sure I can get behind that.
well, I mean, I would say it's also in the personal responsibility thing is to take personal responsibility to make sure that the other person is also taking responsibility and being educated and knows what the risks are. So I would argue
Mhm.
it's part of that personal responsibility to be like, oh, do you want to be restrained? Do you know what that means? Do you know what we're going to do? Do you know what the risks are associated with that? So I would argue that that's part of prick, but then that's also part of frack. I don't know that
Yeah,
there's
I was gonna
enough
say
of a
that's
distinction
already
there.
part of rack. I don't. I
Yeah.
adding the personal responsibility portion of it kind of is borderline for me. You're saying it's your problem to figure it out, not mine, and I don't really care for that personally. I feel like rack
Yeah.
leaves it more open for community discussion than you figure it out on your own, which is the vibe that this prick is giving me.
Yeah, that's very true. We also haven't. Well, I guess it depends on how you look at it. I don't know. I mean, it's also because it's not also just about like the physical like possibilities. I mean, there's as anyone who's been in the scene for a long time would know. There's emotional damage that can happen too in scenes, and especially involved in the kinks that
Definitely.
have to do with like humiliation and degradation and that kind of thing. And that's why
Yeah.
aftercare
Mhm.
is such a huge thing in the kink scene and stuff like that, because what we do in a scene does not necessarily reflect on reality at all in
I'm
like
going to
any
point out
manner.
real quick that we have covered a couple of terms that I'm for sure certain that people who are not into kink will not know the terminology for. I mentioned CNC and didn't actually describe what that is. You just mentioned aftercare, and a lot of people may not know what aftercare is. We may want to actually define some of these terms before we go too much further. That way, people are aware of what we're talking about.
Well, that's very true. CNC is a very specific kink. CNC is an acronym that stands for consensual non-consent, which
I like
might.
I like just figured that one out here in like the last like I don't know since I've had my page. Like it's actually interesting. My page creating my page has actually been so amazing because I'll see people talking about stuff and I'm like, okay, I need to do some research here. Like, what does this mean? I'm
Mhm.
so like in the corner here, but
And then
I
My
you'll
did find that
page,
one out.
My page is very CNC focused because it
Yeah.
is one of my biggest kinks. So I will explain to people what it is as delicately as possible on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Consensual non-consent being that during the scene, the consent has already taken place. So
Yeah.
forceful things can happen without having to consent at the time.
Yeah.
So it can be very scary for somebody who has a traumatized past. If they've been attacked in the past or they have had non-consensual things happen to them in the past, it can be very traumatic. So
Yeah.
consent beforehand, and we're talking extreme communication, heavy
Yeah.
communication. The consent for CNC that has to take place before and after is huge.
Yeah.
And it's something that a lot of people don't really think about. They think, oh, that just sounds hot. They don't think about like the trauma that
Yeah.
it can trigger in you if you
Yeah.
haven't discussed this adequately
Definitely.
in advance.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely been like a lot of things that like I've wanted to try personally. Like I said, there's especially because being on these pages, all of a sudden I'll like keep scrolling past stuff, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I didn't know I was into that, but apparently I am. But
Yep.
yeah,
Mhm.
there's definitely a lot of that for me is like just because of like past experiences and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, I don't know. But then also I'm like, you know, the partner that I'm with too at the same time, like I know if we were to sit down and have a conversation about these things, it would be like no hesitation. Like, we can try this. We're gonna do everything we can to make you feel both of us feel, as safe as we can and everything like that. But yeah, it's just it's definitely it's definitely not something that you can just do, as I've noticed like as I've learned like through having my page and stuff like that. So yeah, I definitely understand the whole
And that
it's
jumps
hard
into
Yeah,
like
that
past
jumps into
experiences
the
and stuff.
that jumps into the
and
whole phrase
aftercare.
about for aftercare too. Yeah,
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 because
exactly.
that's the
so
big
so
one that I
you've
want to
given the
discuss.
consent. You've given the consent. You've done the scene. Someone has had things happen to them. Someone has done things to the other person, and so the scene is now done. Uh,
Yeah.
Mhm.
done is in like that part of it is done. You are not done.
Yeah.
If you think that's it, you're gonna roll over, go to sleep, and that's the end of it. I'm sorry, but you have fucked up. You have
Yeah.
you have big fucked up. All right, because and I think Drow mentioned this before, and this is true for a lot of people. Kink has a lot of relation to trauma. It is not how everyone
Yep.
comes to kink, and it
Mhm.
is not necessary to have it to come to kink.
Exactly.
But the way that I like to define kinky things, and I think this is probably the best way to do it, is that it is generally a safe exploration of what would otherwise be a traumatic experience. And I like to equate. I'm actually working on my own stand-up special all about this stuff and writing my own stand-up material because I have a whole thing about this because I think kinky stuff is very similar to comedy in a way. You go to a comedy show, right? Comedians joke
Mhm.
about the most awful things, but we all laugh and giggle about it, generally speaking, as long as it's funny, hopefully. And that's a good thing. I'm not saying comedians shouldn't do that. That's a good thing. And there's a lot of psychology behind comedy because it is much like kink is a safe subconscious exploration of what would otherwise be horrible things. There's a book called Stranger in a Strange Land by a science fiction author, one of the grandfathers of science fiction, Robert A. Heinlein. That's all about this guy coming in and exploring what it means to be human, and he doesn't really get humor at all for like the first half of the book, and then finally he turns around and defines comedy in a way that has always struck me as humans laugh in order not to cry. And comedy, I think, is pretty much that. And it is safe and psychologically good for us to explore themes that are otherwise hurtful in comedy because it gives us that distance. It gives us that processing of things in a way that is safe and healthy. And kink is the
Mhm.
same thing. CNC,
Disagree.
you disagree?
I disagree. I think there are elements of kink that would fit that, but I don't think every element of kink is something that
No,
would
no,
be
no.
traumatic or hurtful
I
otherwise.
I I
Okay.
I said that's not everything, and it's not. It doesn't apply to everything, and it's not how everyone has to come to it. So it's not. It's absolutely not everything, but a lot of it is. A lot of it is like CNC, the first C, the consent is the most important part of that because otherwise, what is
Mhm.
I mean the harsh term for CNC
I have
is rape
personally
play.
never been through non-consensual trauma like that, but it's still my biggest kink.
Oh
And I think that there's a misconception that these traumas are necessary to enjoy these
no, not
certain
necessary.
and I dislike that quite a bit because people will be very odd to me because they're like, "Oh, you must be extremely traumatized." Well,
No,
I
no, no, no.
am, but not like that.
No, no, no.
Right.
Different
It's
trauma,
not
thank you.
it's not necessary, but it is how some people get into things. And I don't mean, so you can come at it from healthy ways. Like, I've never experienced this, but I enjoy
Um,
like the thought of playing with it. Or you
I
can come
will
to it in
also
a way that
say that for me, it is a dopamine seek. And I think that for as many people as are traumatized, there's just as many who are also just dopamine seeking. And what better dopamine seek than there is to have a sexual relationship with these, dangerous, exciting, spicy things that you wouldn't get elsewhere. So I think
I
that
mean,
there's a mix of trauma and dopamine seeking for the neurodivergent in there.
I agree with that. I don't actually know what the numbers are. I just know from personal experience, because it's because the other way to come at it is from a trauma angle, which is that people have been through things and they're taking the power of that event back by
Mm-hmm.
doing something similar, like exposure therapy, essentially. But it's the power of that is under their control now, and
That
so
has
it
to be
is.
done so carefully
Yeah.
too.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
But well, that
Mm-hmm.
comes down to, I mean, today's topic is about consent and not boundaries. Boundaries would be another great topic to talk about. We should do that in a future episode,
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
I think knowledge and education, experience is great, but knowledge and education, healthy communication, and boundaries are like the three cornerstones, I think, of kink. Consent
Yeah.
being part of honest communication. So
Yeah.
but that's part of why boundaries are so important, because
You
boundaries
know,
are what turns an otherwise consenting
I
therapeutic in the power of the person seen into something that's not.
I do want to point out we somehow completely missed discussing what aftercare is. We mentioned it and then we
Oh,
moved on to something
right.
else entirely very quickly.
Well, let's go link back to that. So aftercare, you are not done. The scene is done. Things have been done to people. You have done something to someone else. They have done things to you. But that is not done. You have explored things that could otherwise be hurtful, and even if everything was done with consent, someone might still be hurt by them. Humiliation and degradation comes to mind because I think a lot of people,
Yeah.
even consenting to it, can take that personally, only because self-esteem issues and body image issues are such a
What
big
you
problem in
said during the
today's
scene could
society.
still be hurtful later.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even
Yes.
if someone wants to be called an absolutely lovely cum dump, that doesn't mean afterwards they're not in the back of their head having that running back there being like, this is all I'm worth, this is all I'm worth, when that was just part of the scene. So
Yeah.
aftercare is the idea that you have to then process for yourself and for your other person together, take care of each other, not just physically. It's not just let's grab each other water and
And it
like
goes
towel
both
off,
ways.
and it goes
It's so
both
important
ways.
that it goes both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. The sad that I think is one of the most overlooked parts of aftercare. Just
Mm-hmm.
because I've done it to you and you want it done to you
Sub
doesn't mean
drops happens.
yeah,
Dom
Oh,
drops
yeah.
happen
100%.
just as much as sub drops, and we have to acknowledge that and address that. Because if
And
we
Yeah.
don't take care of people both ways, everyone hurts.
Yeah.
right, so you want to make sure that both people can recover, can go back to what would otherwise be a normative value for themselves after having gone through something that even consenting can still be traumatic in some ways.
And
And
aftercare can look different for different people. Some people want
yep,
to, have their favorite bowl of ice cream and watch TV together and cuddle. Some people are going to, have their favorite food ordered. Some people are going to need to do something together that's going to be, outside the home, outside of the environment where the scene happened. It really depends.
Yeah.
Aftercare is different for everybody, and you should discuss the aftercare before the scene even begins, because that
Yeah.
aftercare is part of the scene. You
Yeah.
can't have this discussion when both people are still experiencing drop or about to experience drop and expect to have a good aftercare experience. This has to be discussed just as much as the risks and the consent in advance.
and
Yeah.
Katara, one of our lovely chatters here, if I'm saying that right, I believe that's Q with a K kind of pronunciation, has brought up a lovely point in that after you've been through a scene, after you've experienced some kinks that maybe you thought you were going to enjoy, it is very important to reevaluate the consent as you've gone through that experience. Maybe you tried being degraded and you did not like it. Maybe it struck way too personal for you and you don't ever want to do it
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
So you have to, yeah, like you can't.
Consent can
You
be
ha-
withdrawn at any time. If
Anytime.
you hear
Yeah.
something during the scene, you're like, oh no, don't say that to me again. You have to be respected. Cancel the
Yeah.
whole thing if they don't stop. No
Yeah.
more. We're done. I just told you not to degrade me anymore. I'm not into it. What you just said was too far. We're not doing degrading anymore. If they
Yeah.
don't listen, you need to leave.
Yeah.
And it's
no
going
longer
to
safe.
happen. It's going to happen in the scene as you do things with people and as you go through things, that you're going to find boundaries for yourself that you didn't know you had. That's common. That and there's
Mhm.
no one's, that's not like someone's done something wrong. That's not your fault. That's not someone's fault. There's no one at fault there. It's just you found something that
Mhm.
crossed a line for you, and you hopefully are able to voice that
They brought
and
out
can
that
voice that.
they brought out that big paddle that you thought you were down for, but once you got that first impact and you're like, nope, I don't want that anymore. They gotta
Yeah.
respect that. Whether
Yeah.
they're into the big paddle or not, they have to
Def-
respect that.
Definitely. Yeah.
And so I think, Mouse, you actually mentioned a couple terms a couple minutes ago that people might not know: sub drop and dom drop. So maybe we should
Yes.
explain those as well, because those also relate
Those. Yep.
to kink as well.
It is a depressive episode that can occur after a scene. Doms sometimes experience it after causing that type of harm and trauma. They can experience
Mm.
like, I'm shit, I don't feel good, I don't know why I would do this, what's wrong with me? And subs can feel that too. Why do I like this? What am I doing? Why would he say these things to me? And we do have to cater to people to help them
Yeah.
come through this and realize that they are valuable, they are loved, everything that was done was consensual. Nobody was hurt here. We're all happy this happened. It is a very important part of the process. Sub
Yeah.
drop and dom drop. Dom drop isn't discussed nearly enough, and it is just as important and just as commonly occurring as sub drop. But there is this toxic masculinity era that doms shouldn't be able to experience this, but
Yeah.
they do, and we have to
Yeah.
acknowledge that and address that.
Yeah. Definitely.
I mean, that's a big part of dynamic too. I mean, the thing is that
Mhm.
in the end of the day, we might all be playing roles, but even if you're in a 24/7 like experience where like the power exchange is always in the relationship, and it's not just related
Mhm.
to just specific scenes, you're still two people deep down. Both of you can be heard. So someone
Mhm.
might like be like the 24/7 alpha Chad in charge. Doesn't mean they can't be emotionally damaged from something. So and boundaries can change and consent can shift depending on someone's feeling on the matter. Liv
Mhm.
normally being on this podcast would be beyond her boundaries. She pushed herself to be here today. She was feeling up to it. That doesn't mean she might not experience a depressive episode and boundary shift. She doesn't want to host anymore.
Yeah.
That's totally understandable.
Starlight just,
Again, no one's to blame there. It happens.
Yeah.
Star just pointed out that dom drop and sub drop can both last longer than you expect too. You may come out of aftercare and still be feeling down, and it's important to address that and discuss that.
Yeah.
Even if it's, the next day, you still have to be able to discuss that.
Exactly.
Definitely. Yeah.
And so I don't know that I have anything more specific on consent here. I would
I
jump if
do.
anyone has. Oh, okay.
I want to
Let's go.
talk about implied consent and how
Ah,
dangerous this can be and how important it is that even in implied consent, prior to that occurring, you have to have already been sure and know that nodding means yes, silence means yes, because it may not. There's a lot of people
Yeah.
who misconstrue silence as consent when in fact it's just trying to diffuse the situation. Anything
Yeah.
but a yes is a no. And even in implied consent, you have to have had a conversation and communication enough in advance to have very clear signs as what is yes and what is no.
Yeah.
In a scene, you could have nodding mean yes, like yes, I'm okay to continue. You could have a single tap be a yes, a double tap be a no. These are things that are not explicit but have to be addressed.
Yeah.
Far, far too often is silence without prior conversation being construed as a yes cause people to be harmed. And implied consent is just very, very tricky. And it's something that I think is just assumed way too much to be a yes when it is not.
Yeah. I've definitely had experiences with that, and yeah,
Anything
it really
besides,
annoys me when
exactly,
people do
anything
that. It annoys
besides
me
a
so much.
yes is a no.
Yeah.
If it isn't an enthusiastic yes, assume it is a no.
Yeah.
one of our other chatters actually PM'd me earlier something that I only just saw, but still applies here to what we're talking about. And it's one of the reasons why like safe words is such an important thing, because You know, you might be, and especially we talked about CNC. CNC specifically a scene where someone's basically mimicking, forcing someone to do that, and someone saying no, stop can be part of that. So having a boundary word where you say no, you're crossing this penguin, and then that means that scene has to come to a stop just to ensure that, you know, those boundaries aren't being crossed and that people are being safe in doing that. Because like we talked about before, consent can change at any time. Someone can say, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't feel comfortable. And that's the end of it.
Right.
That is the end of it. And there are no hard feelings. You cannot have hard feelings if somebody safe words. If you have a hard feeling after somebody safe words, you are the problem. You are the problem, because safe words and consent being revoked are not your right to be, I thought this was going to happen. That's unfair. No, we don't do that.
Yeah.
Everyone has the right to say no, no matter what.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Qatar brought up another point that you know, it's part of hopefully on both ends. Really, this goes dom and sub, though. I believe they mentioned dom specifically. Is that you have to try and pay attention to the behavior of your partner. You know, read their body language. You know, even if your dom looks like a little unwilling or a little into something, don't like kind of coerce them, because this actually comes up in education circles regarding kink. There's a difference between coercion and consent, because someone can you know, kind of unwillingly say yes, and yes, I know what I'm doing, and yes, I'll do it, but not actually want to do it. And I think this comes up for doms a lot, because there are doms that don't like to hit people, but will do like impact play only because a sub is asking for it, and they believe that's part of their role, and they should be able to do that. And I've known people who were more like soft dom, more of like the caregiving type, that didn't ever want to actually strike or hit someone, but would do it in scenes because they felt that was part of their role and they had to do it. And it goes the opposite way too. Even if a sub is willing to do something for you because you're a dom, because you're their dom, if they don't look comfortable, don't make them do that. Turn around and say, wait, do you really want to do this? Do you not really want to do this? It's totally fine. Because the whole thing is that we both want to be happy, right? Or well, I should say everyone involved in a scene wants to be happy, wants it to be a fun experience. So if someone is not having that fun experience, then you're all not doing your jobs, because you got to make sure that that's the foundation of what you're doing. And Qatar also brought up having a non-verbal safe word can also be important if you're doing any kind of scenes that involve being bound or gagged or things like that.
I mentioned the hand signals earlier. If I tap twice in the back, I always mean get the fuck off me. That is my universal. If I tap you twice in the back, even if I'm bound, get off me. I tap you twice because I'm tapping out.
And like with me as a partner, like I refuse to do anything kink related if as you know, if someone tries to say, well, I don't have a safe word, because that's not cool with me. You like have different ways of signaling, but like, you know, if you can verbalize it, because not everybody's good at noticing you know, different like hand movements and stuff. Because
well, that's something that you have to be extremely careful for, because if you are in a scene where somebody is bound, gagged, you have to be looking for their nonverbal safe words, and you have to discuss these in advance. You do not have the option of, quote, not seeing it. If you don't see it, you're still violating their consent. The second they start, you know, if I think the example that Qatar gave was like bouncing. If they're bouncing up and down to get you to stop, and you ignore that, you're ignoring their consent, and everything after that point is non-consensual.
Yeah.
No, I agree completely.
Definitely.
But like if there's no form of safe word or anything like that, I don't do anything with them. It's because then like I feel like there's no safety involved, and that's not cool with me.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Absolutely. The second somebody says, you don't get to use your safe word today, leave the region. Leave it. Go. Just walk out. What they're telling you is they're about to do something non-consensual that they know you will not like, and they're not giving you a choice. That is not kink. That is rape.
Yeah.
And I will say it right there. The second somebody says, you're not allowed to use your safe word, that's your punishment, leave. Run. Get as far away as you can. Don't ever come back. That person is telling you that their idea of punishment is to do something non-consensual to you. And I have seen this happen way too often in kink.
As
Somebody
if I-
telling somebody that you don't get to have a safe word as a punishment, run. Get away
Yeah.
from there.
Yeah.
Yep, I could not agree more. And anything that involves someone, and not in a playful like scene way, but anything that involves someone like actually taking the power to set a boundary, to remove consent, or to basically end a scene from someone else. Anything that does that, anything that pushes for that coercion, physical restraint, like anything to try and stop, all of that is bad. If they have your best interests at heart, and this is really what it comes down to when it comes to all consent things. If someone has your best interest at heart, they want to make sure that you're comfortable. They want to make sure that you stay comfortable. That you're giving consent to this. That you're educated on what the risks are. You're educated on what you're doing. They're going to give you all the power you need in order to turn around and say no at any time. And anything that takes away that ability, just go the opposite way.
We've discussed power exchange a couple of times here, and the big thing about power exchange is it really isn't all that much of an exchange. The sub still has the power, even if they've given it to the dom. They can take it back whenever they need to.
Exactly.
Power exchange is temporary, and it's based only on mutual agreement, not by force. The second somebody tells you that you're not allowed to take your power back, that you're not allowed to speak up and say no or stop something, you're in a bad situation. Somebody's taking advantage of you, and it's time to go. Get out, because this is dangerous.
Yeah.
Power exchange is only ever consensual, and it's only ever temporary. The second consent is withdrawn, it's over.
Yeah. No, that's very true.
And
Agree.
Yeah, there's some
And-
really,
and-
really dangerous situations that can happen really fast if you don't speak up for yourself and stop things as soon as you see these red flags, because this is giving you a red flag, a huge glaring red flag that consent is being ignored, and they won't
Yeah.
stop there.
and it's also the more extreme of a scene you're getting yourself involved into, whatever that may be, the more important it is that those boundaries are being set and being very carefully monitored, and that everyone's maintaining their power to turn around and say no too. Because I mean, there are like very extreme things that can be done in a scene. Maybe you're entirely restrained and you're gagged, and you're adding CNC into that, and like literally there are people that enjoy losing absolute control. Total power exchange is the term there, where they just want to brain off and just be a toy. But it is still so incredibly important that that person can also still be able to set that boundary and turn around. And the more important it is, the more power
At the
that
end of
person
the
is losing
day,
in the scene.
that power is still theirs. They may be giving it to their dom or their master temporarily, but even in a TPE situation, total power exchange situation, that person has to be able to take it back whenever they need to feel safe. If they need to go into a space where they are outside of their scene, they are no longer in the TPE scene. I know some couples who are TPE where they have one room in their house in which those rules do not apply. They are equals the second they enter the room, and that's where they go to have their conversations. I
That's
don't
a
feel
really
safe
good
with us.
idea.
They
That's
have one
actually
safe
That's a
room
really good idea.
where all TPE is out the window. They are equals. They will have their conversations, and he knows damn well the second they're in that room, he cannot try to force her into submission at all. This is their safe space to have their discussions. And if you don't have that, not necessarily a room, but if you don't have the ability to have a safe place to have a discussion, I would argue that you're bordering on abuse there. Because at that point, there is hardly a way to call that consent if you're not allowed to take it back whenever you want. Because how can you take away consent if you can't discuss it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right on that one. I've been in like 24/7 TPE relationships before too, and there was always we didn't have like a specific room. That's a pretty good idea. We always set the boundary where once we were out of the house, that ended, because you still got to be able to. I mean, so well, I have a weird view. A lot of people have, I think, a toxic view on relationships and how relationships work. As a society is very bad about telling people, "Oh, romance, find your soulmate," and that's really a really toxic way to look at romance. Stick with this relationship, even if you're fucking being abused, because that's what you should do. They're your soulmate. Stick with them, and it's
Literally,
really
yeah.
bad. But the reason I bring that up is because my idea of a healthy relationship is that you're both still individual people living your own individual lives, and you need to be able to individually take care of yourself. And so I might be in a 24/7 TPE relationship with someone, as I have been before, but I'm still going to encourage them to be able to leave the house, be able to go to work, be able to have friends, be able to do things outside of that power exchange, because it's
Yeah.
still important that they be able to take care of themselves. You can't
Exactly.
you can't just expect someone to like brain off the entire time, their entire life. That's it. Because yeah, like you said, that is abuse. You're not allowing them
I
to turn
think
around and be
we
able to be
could
healthy.
really, I think we could really benefit from a whole episode on TPE alone, because that is
I
such a
definitely could.
interesting power dynamic to have, and it's something that has to be discussed, I think, at much greater length than we have time for tonight, because this is a huge topic.
I
I have a
agree.
lot of opinions on TPE. I think it can be great, but I think it's also very dangerous for people who don't know what they're getting into. And
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of
Absolutely.
predatory TPE DOMs out there.
That's absolutely correct. I mean, you can say the same about everything. It's just that TPE is such, because it involves, like, it's literally in the name, power exchange, and especially total power
Mhm.
exchange, and that is
Yeah.
such an inherently important
I will give
dynamic in a
a
relationship.
quick example of how I know there's so many really, really dangerous TPE DOMs. I look very young for my age. I am turning 34 in a couple of weeks. Most people don't believe that I'm over 20. I look very young for my age, and I'm very petite for my age. I get mistaken for a teenager more often than not, especially on sites where I'm posting photos of myself, not necessarily with my face. People assume I'm very young. I get messaged by DOMs who believe that I am, barely legal. I'm 18, 19 years old. And they are asking me to enter these TPE situations with them. First of all, at that age, I probably wouldn't have enough education to know exactly what TPE is.
Yeah.
And they're looking for somebody who doesn't likely have the education and money to get out of the situation if they need
Yep.
to.
Yeah.
The number of times I have been approached by DOMs who want to go straight into a TPE situation from day one and who are clearly predatory is alarming, because consent is not a factor in any of these discussions.
hmm
Not a single conversation I've had with them has consent been the main thing they wanted to discuss.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's terrifying.
yeah,
Like
it
really,
really is.
They
like
assume I'm younger than I am, and let me tell you, they get real worried when I tell them, no, actually, I have 15 years of experience in the lifestyle, and you are a creep. And let me tell you why. They block me pretty fast.
Good on you. I've
Oh,
always
I'm
felt people like that
I
need to
need
be
these
like
guys.
outed. I
Mhm.
for I mean, because we've had issues, I think, with people, all over the place. I mean, I see that all the time on people's, on the Facebook pages of a lot of admins, on
Mhm.
discords, on, like, that's just, people. I mean, I hate throwing around the term like fake dom and fake sub, only because people get so into those labels and what they mean. But
Mhm.
there are people that literally aren't into the scene, in
They're
any
not into
other
the
way than to
lifestyle. They're
satisfy
into the
themselves.
power. Yeah, they're into the
Exactly.
power, not the power exchange. It's the difference. They don't want power exchange. They don't want you to get it back. They want to take it from you and not give you the option to have it back, which is
Exactly.
not what the lifestyle's about.
And now the thing is, there are, people that focus on self satisfaction and everything. That's not limited to, like, the selfish idiots that aren't, like, really into the scene. It's that same kind of mindset where they only really care about satisfying what they want and not the other person. um, which is, yeah,
yeah.
it's the exact opposite of what you want.
Yeah.
And it is incredibly dangerous too, because, like, you can't,
Agree.
ever, you have to, and there's the whole thing about, vetting. I know people talk about vetting partners, and that means something
Vetting
different
can
to
mean
everyone.
so many different things. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
different. Do I Google people? Do I go full FBI? Not always. It really depends. If I think that there's something in the past that I need to be aware of, oh yeah, full FBI hat on. I am like using every skills that I have to figure out who this person is, if they've got records. Generally speaking, though, people are in the kink community, they're pretty open and honest, and you can pretty much tell that they're on the level with you.
Yeah.
Every so often, though, you run into that person where you're just like, this isn't sitting right with me. I know
Yeah.
people who go FBI with every person they talk to, even potentially.
Yeah.
And I don't blame them. I really don't. You get a
Yeah.
feel for people eventually. So I personally don't do that, but I know people who go full FBI with every person they even think about talking to.
The only time I've
Yeah.
ever done that was because there was a red flag that made me want to go, like thinking, oh, like, well,
Yeah.
that's interesting. That's something I didn't know. Maybe I do need to do this in order to keep
Mhm.
myself safe. I do think. I mean, so I think there is a tendency in the community where people do jump into dynamics, pretty quickly. I think I mean, well, Mouse, you're demisexual, and so am I. We both are, and so like with us, more so than with other people, we actually have to know the person to feel any
Yes.
attraction generally.
I have to be very, very secure with somebody, and I have to have a very powerful emotional connection, which I don't make by not knowing who they are as a person.
Yeah.
I don't make these decisions flash. I have to be extremely comfortable. I have to be willing to have conversations with this person that I wouldn't have with my family before I'm actually experiencing sexual attraction to them.
Yeah, which gives us the benefit of without directly necessarily meaning to, of essentially vetting someone, because you're going to know who they
Yeah.
are, and you're going to know their opinions on
Mhm.
things, and you're going to know that you can feel, to whatever degree you need to, you're going to feel comfortable and safe with them if you ever
Yes.
did something with them.
I will
Not
also say that I sometimes feel like I have the advantage because I don't experience sexual attraction right off the bat. I'm not, really worried about, seeing what his news look like. I'm not already attracted to this person. I'm getting a look at who they are as a person without any, uh, shroud of attraction there. I am looking at somebody for who they are before I get to that point. And I think that it's harder for somebody who may be not demisexual to do that, but I think it's very important to peel back and remember that just because you're attracted to that person, you need to look at them as a whole person, not through they are who your rose-colored glasses of attraction.
which turns
You
Yeah.
gotta
right back around and,
peel
and
that
links to
pink pack.
consent, because you have to
Mhm.
know that that person is going to understand consent, is going to understand, that it can be withdrawn, is going to understand what, your boundaries are and what you need and what you don't want, and
Yeah.
everything like that. Otherwise, what are you doing? You can't just jump into a dynamic with someone and expect, it's going to work out for you, that person's going to actually have your best interest at heart,
Mhm.
because that is not guaranteed.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
In fact, it's
No.
very much so not guaranteed. If you're jumping into it, in all likelihood, they don't have your best interests at heart because they wouldn't let you jump in otherwise.
Yeah. No.
And that comes down to like basic things. Even on the server that we're all talking on, that this community is based on, Starlight and Friends, we've had
Mhm.
issues with where we have
Yep.
Discord roles specifically for DMing someone. DMs open, DMs closed, ask to DM. And we have had problems with people sending friend
Yeah.
invites or directly DMing someone that had a closed DMs or asked to DM
Yeah.
as their role, which is right there. There is someone that does not
Mhm.
understand consent, like
I
right
will
there,
also
right off the
No.
add,
bat.
I complained about this a couple of weeks ago. I opened up the news channel, even though it was required to,
Yeah.
have everything censored. I got a whole face full of dick when I opened the server, and I was like, okay, I get that this is the news channel. I should have seen that coming. I also did not consent to see that, and that just seems really unfair to me. Kind of
Yeah.
ruined my day. I don't want a face full of pee pee when I don't want a face full of pee pee. I'm not signed up for this. And
Yeah.
I got hit by, that. I didn't expect it. I complained. I
Yeah.
vocalized it because if it's happened to me, I'm sure it's
As
happening
you
to other
should.
people.
Oh,
Yeah.
Because
absolutely.
I am not the type of person who keeps it to myself when I'm upset about something. Because in all likelihood, if I'm upset about it, it's very possible there's less shy people than me who are, or more shy people than me who haven't said anything. And
Exactly.
nobody has ever accused
Neat.
me of being shy, ever. Like I'm just not. I am a very extroverted person, so I try to
Yeah.
speak up when I feel like it's necessary for people like Livy here, who are less likely to speak up.
I know I'm very much an introvert. Although this page, being on this page and, especially like having this community and having this specific Discord group and everything like that, I was actually quite proud of myself because I was one of the ones that experienced that kind of thing. And so like I messaged Star and I was like, like, hey, this thing happened. And she's like,
Mhm.
we got it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like the fact that these people are like taking care of me and like actually taking into
Mhm.
consideration what I say. And they're like, oh, hey, this person wasn't consenting to what she had wanted, so like they dealt with it. And that's Oh, that was really weird for me because I've
Oh, yeah.
always had people being like, if I try to tell them something that's happened to me, they're very much like, oh, it's
Dismissive, yeah.
happened, true, but like the fact that it was like very much like got taken into consideration, got dealt with right away. I was like, whoa, like this is very weird for me, but it's definitely kind of helped to like get me out of that comfort zone a little bit to just be like, hey, you know what, like if something's bothering me or if I feel that, my boundaries or that my consent is getting violated and stuff like that, it's getting a little bit easier. But yes, I'm still very much like if something's happening, I'm like, oh.
I jokingly
Okay.
call myself a brat advocate because I will be the person to say something. Like I have the
Yeah.
attitude and I have the voice and I will tell you
Yeah.
what I think. So I call myself the brat advocate, and I also have, of course, my brat union Discord server where I invite brats to come in, and I will absolutely fight for them. Something
Yeah.
happens, I'll go to war. I don't care. I
Yeah.
had a guy pick a fight with one of my brats in server. They never saw it coming. I wasn't even paying attention to the server. They didn't know I was actually sitting there watching. I came out of nowhere and just
Oh my goodness.
annihilated this poor little man. He had no idea what hit him. He was banned before he even had a clue what happened. Started calling me names in my DMs like it was gonna bother me. Sir,
Oh
there's
my God.
nothing you could call me that I don't get called during sex that is, much
Right.
worse than that. Like you're not gonna do anything to bother me, little man. Don't worry.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That's awesome.
People greatly underestimate the spite of a brat who's trying to protect other brats.
Yeah.
And to bring that up and to link that back to like vetting and us actually taking care of stuff as much as possible. I'm not gonna say there aren't assholes in the scene because there totally are. Even people, you can be in the scene 20 years and still be a fucking asshole and still
Yeah.
make mistakes
Yeah.
and not listen to consent and stuff like that. Not everyone is perfect or will have your best interest at heart. But I will say because honest communication and boundaries and consent are such a big part of the scene, I highly recommend people who are new to the scene who might not necessarily uh, uh, be quite experienced or educated on the thing. If you live anywhere big enough, there are kink events called munches that local
Ooh.
communities will put on.
Oh yeah.
Yes, and
I've
I
I've
don't
heard of a
even
lot of
live
those.
in a large area. I don't even live in a large area. I live in a very rural community. There is a munch that occurs about 30 minutes from where I live. I don't personally like going to them. I prefer my online community if I can, just because
Yeah.
there's some weird people in my community personally that I wouldn't want to have to be at a munch with.
well, yeah, and that's why I brought up that even you can still there's
Yeah.
assholes
Mhm.
everywhere, but and online communities are fine for this too. If you can find the right Discord, I suggest ours. Mouse's is actually really good too. But if you find the right communities, and online communities is the same thing as a munch
I will
essentially, really.
say
If
this
you're
as
on something
well.
opposed to this,
I will say this as well. We are a community, and I see it as our responsibility to help each other thrive.
Yeah.
There are
right?
always
And
going to be assholes, but at the end of the day, we are a community and we are
Yeah.
a small community. We are
Yeah.
still a minority group that needs to look out for each other.
Yeah.
but
And
that's
if
what I
Exactly.
you
wanted to
tell
bring up.
me that somebody's mistreating you, I will go hellfire and brimstone on them
But that's what
because
I wanted to
I'm
bring
not
up
going to let somebody get hurt.
is because consent and because that is all so important to the community. You will probably find if you find the right people, if you find the right community, you'll probably hopefully find people like myself and Drow and Mouse here live that will jump straight to putting down anyone that breaks that consent, that break those boundaries, that isn't honestly
Yeah.
communicating, because that is so
Mhm.
important to us personally as people who are
Mhm.
in the scene and need to
Yeah.
respect that and need to have that respected of us, that
Mhm.
Yeah.
that is like the prime thing that we need to see from other people. If you're
Yeah.
not here
Yeah.
if you're here to violate any of those standards, the same things that we need, that we want,
Yeah.
then we don't want you
If
here.
you are an unsafe person, word will spread. It
Yeah.
always does. I had
And
Yeah.
a very recent experience where somebody in an online community I was in came to us with a sob story about how they got kicked out of their community. And with a little bit of research, we found out the reasoning was they were a sex offender and didn't disclose to anybody they were a sex offender.
oof,
So
Ooh.
that's an
they got
oof.
kicked out of
Ick.
the entire community they were in, and they moved hoping to find another kink
Ick.
community that would accept them. And I was like, oh, maybe you should tell them you're a sex offender the first time. Because
Yeah.
like I kind of 100% see why they kicked you out. Because holy
Y-
crap, that's one of those things you should definitely mention.
Yeah.
And that's why I brought up the munches, is because really what I mean is that you need to finding a community with people that have those good standards, that know what they're
Mhm.
talking about, like any of
Yeah.
ours, will really help you kind of set yourself. Because we aren't in it for ourselves. I mean, I want to enjoy myself, sure, but my goal is to make sure everyone's enjoying themselves, whether I'm working as
Exactly.
an administrator in a community or whether I'm in a scene with someone, because that's what I'm here for. That's literally my goal. And
Yeah.
you finding people like that is probably one of the safest things you can do. I know.
Mhm.
I equate it to warfare. You got your battle buddy in the military. If you're going into battle, you got that guy right beside
Mm.
you. Find a battle buddy in the scene, someone you can bounce things off of, someone you can check in
Mm.
with to make sure
Yeah.
Yes.
and talk about, hey, I met this guy. He did X, Y, Z.
Mhm.
Hey, I met this person. They did X, Y, Z. They want to do X, Y,
There
Z.
Yeah.
are
Is this
mentors.
safe?
Yeah.
Yeah,
There are always
Yeah.
absolutely.
people who will be willing to mentor you. And there
Yeah.
are, we will probably have to discuss this another day, but there are certain things to look for to mentor, to find somebody who's going to be good for you to help teach you the scene and
Yeah.
teach you how to navigate the scene, teach you how to vet people. There are mentors out there who are willing to mentor you and will take the time and will help you learn and feel safe in the community. There are red flags to look for. If your mentor's trying to have sex with you, they're probably not trying to mentor you. That's not
Yeah.
what a mentor looks like. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of things to look for. We'll have to discuss this at another time because mentoring is a big part of the community that a lot of people don't realize. People who've been in the community for a while do tend to not necessarily move into a mentor role, but they do tend to take on people that they do mentor so that the
Yeah.
newcomers into the community are also safe
Yeah.
and safe for the community
Yeah.
because new people could be just as dangerous as they are in danger.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. No,
So
that's yeah, for sure.
yeah, and we are technically over time here. Does anyone have anything to add on the topic of consent while we are sitting here?
No, I just wanted to make
Not
sure we
really.
talked about the implied consent, especially. That was a big one for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we did, right? Everyone
I think-
understands the nuance there. That's super important.
Yeah. Yeah, I think.
Okay. All right.
I hope we
All
did
right.
a good
That's
job
good.
explaining it.
I hope we did.
Uh,
I don't know.
Now, would one of you like to take? So the next episode would be in 2 weeks from now. So let me just open a fucking calendar here. If I can open my calendar, would be on the 23rd, Friday the 23rd. Would one of you like to pick a topic for that date for us to talk about?
Well, I do want to talk about brats eventually. I don't know if we want to talk about it next episode, but I'm open to.
I'm kind of actually really interested to learn more, especially with you being, such a brat and everything like that. Like, I'm actually very, because I'm definitely like, I like to say that I'm a brat and that's like my name on Facebook, but like when it comes down to it, I am such a sub, like, especially when it comes to my
Brats
partner. Like, I
are
am such a sub.
subs.
Well, I
That's what I
know,
want
but
to discuss. There's so many different
yeah,
types
like,
of
and that's the
brats out
thing, right?
there.
It's because like I feel like it's part of that, but at the same time, like there's still
Yes.
so much I don't know, and I feel like I do so many things wrong when it comes to bratting, and it'd be really, really interesting to like learn like more about what a brat actually is, because like I just like that's kind of an area that I'm like extremely new in, and like yeah, so I'm definitely like down for that.
Well, we can do episode 2. Can be the mouse show, and it can be all about brats, basically. If that's what you guys want to do, I have no problems with
The
that.
mouse show.
It's gonna be. It's gonna be. You're
That's
the
adorable.
brat
I
That's
love
what it's
expert.
that.
gonna be.
Yeah.
The brat queen is about to host the brat episode. Let's go.
That's right.
Oh
All right.
yes.
So I hope you guys enjoyed listening to us ramble on. I hope everyone learned something. I hope you guys like the conversation. I hope you guys are going to go out and research different things about consent and anything we've talked about. Really, just go learn about it
Yeah.
and find some reputable sources and think about how that applies to you and think about how you can apply that to your life. Because again, knowledge and experience are both really important, but knowledge is the most important part of that. You got to know things before you can
Yeah.
experience them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so I hope you guys are looking forward to in 2 weeks, episode 2, all about brats. It's going to be the mouse show. And we will see you guys on that date. This video will again be on YouTube on my channel, which I will link somewhere in the community, probably where I put up the Twitch channel. And it will be available forever, as far as I'm aware. And I'll probably stick everyone's socials, anyone who's interested in the About Me. So if you want to find us individually, you should be able to find links there, or click on the Discord invite link that's going to be in the description and come join us here and chat with us live as we're talking. And other than that, have a good night, everybody. Guys, thank you for joining me with this. Great fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Had fun.
It was fun. Yeah.